This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com, and this is my very first on-the-road shoot interview with none other than WWE legend Tony Garea, who was a longtime agent, still sporting that blonde tans that he was always known for and looking as fit as ever. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great. Good to be here.
Yeah, nice to finally get to interview you. I've met you numerous times over the years, and usually you're hanging out with Barbara Goodish.
Yeah, she's a very good friend of mine. I met her in 1979. It's about the same time that Frank met her. And of course, she's from New Zealand, but she's from the South Island, and I'm from the North, but we had that in common. Then I lost touch with her for the longest time, and J.J. Dillon said that she lives just north of Daytona Beach. So I got in touch with her, and then we, met for dinner, met for lunch, and we've been friends ever since. And her boyfriend plays in a rock and roll band, so we go up there and see her, at least twice a month when I'm in Florida. So it worked out good.
Full time?
What's that?
You don't live in Florida full time then?
Well, I am full time, but I get out of there a lot too. Like I have a place up in Connecticut, and I was just telling my buddy, I pulled my kitchen out of there and put a floor down and got half the kitchen in, and my son and my friend are going to put the rest of it in.
Sounds like a big job. And as far as you're growing up, you're obviously from New Zealand. I understand you played rugby and some other sports. Could you tell us a little bit about your childhood?
Yeah, well, we grew up in the suburbs of Auckland, which is the largest city. And then when I was about 8 years old, my parents bought an orchard up north in a little town called Huapai. So we had the orchard for probably about 6 years. I used to walk to school in bare feet on an unpaved road. And then when I got to the high school level, the bus picked us up outside, and the high school was about 12 miles away. And then they sold the orchard, and we moved back into the suburbs, and I switched high schools. And I stayed there till I was, finished high school. Worked a couple of jobs around the city, and then I went in and worked in the forest for about 18 months. And then I worked on a dam site. I was about 17. I was working with explosives and driving bulldozers and, anything that needed to be done. And then came back into the city, worked for the one of the city councils, and was playing rugby, and one of the guys in the team asked me if I'd be interested in wrestling because I was working out. But back there in 1964 or thereabouts, it was a no-no to work out and play rugby or any other sport because the theory was that you'd get muscle bound. Well, we all know that wasn't correct. So anyway, I started wrestling, and it was never a full-time job over there. It was just a part-time, and you had a season there that was maybe 4 months, and that was it. But it was a little bit of extra cash, and I worked at a bouncer at some of the nightclubs around town. And then I was asked if I wanted to go to Australia. And that was in 1971. So I went there. I was going to go for 2 weeks, and he kept me for 8 weeks. That was promoted Jim Barnett. And then I came back to New Zealand, and I was helping my buddies with they were in the cement works. They were doing sidewalks and garage floors, factory floors, putting slabs down for houses, new construction. And so I was working in concrete and then they called me back to Australia, and I was there 12 weeks. And the promoter asked me if I'd like to come here to the United States. So I thought, well, I'll come for a year. So I came here in March of 1972. And actually, the first match was in Orlando, Florida. And I came with an Australian wrestler, Johnny Gray. So we came as a tag team. And at that time in Florida, there was also Larry O'Day and Ron Miller, the Australians. So we knew somebody when we came here, which was a help. So I was in Florida for about 7 months, and then I moved up. But it was held, missing the rugby seasons, it was like, I should be playing rugby now.
How was the pro wrestling training compared to rugby? I was actually a rugby player as well. Different kind of bumps with wrestling and rugby, different kind of trauma. But I know in those days they still kayfabed it a bit. So how was your experience overall, and who trained you?
Well, with the rugby, I started running, on the road about a month before we actually started training. So 5 miles a night. And then when we started the rugby training, it was sprints, short sprints, 50 yards, 25 yards, 100 yards, 75. But with the wrestling, we wrestled on a wooden floor, and we had a canvas, and under the canvas, we had the felt that they put under carpet, so that we couldn't take bumps. We didn't have a ring. It was just wrestling. And then we learned to take the bump, but it was pretty stiff, and it knocked the wind out of me more than one time, Actually, I threw my hip out one time, trying to be a smart ass and say, I can do this, and then, paid for that for weeks.
Did they shoot on you at all or teach you any submission wrestling?
A little bit, but not too much, because it wasn't necessary. But then I found out, when I got over here, that maybe I should learn some stuff. And I just learned a couple of things, just to, let my opponent, if anybody was going to get smart, just let them know, But they didn't know. That was the only thing I knew.
Did that ever happen to you in a match over the years where you
had? It happened one time in Portland, Maine. Guy was getting a little frisky with me. He's passed away now, so I don't want to mention his name, But he just grabbed me in a headlock, so I shot my right leg through in front of his right leg and put my shoulder into his butt and grabbed his left leg. And he had to let go because he was going down on his nose, And then I had control of him. But that was about the only time that I recall.
And you mentioned Jim Barnett, of course. He's a legendary promoter of not only Australia and New Zealand, but also Atlanta, and was one of the great minds in professional wrestling. Could you share some memories about him? And do you have an impression of him?
No, Jim, I say, if it wasn't for Jim, I probably wouldn't be here. But I do know some of the Australian boys were asked if they want to go to America. And, they said no, and he wouldn't ask them again. So it was a one-time thing. So when he said, Tony, I think you do well in the States. Would you like to go? And I said, yes. And, just like that. So, but he used to have his meeting in Melbourne with all the guys. He'd call them in for a meeting, and he'd ask, is there any questions? And most of the time he didn't, because, he took pretty good care of the guys. I mean, he had to. If you want the guys coming from America, to Australia to work for them and be away from their family for so long. And of course, back there, when we were out traveling in public, which we do, we flew from like Sydney to Melbourne for Saturday, and then we done TV Sunday morning, and then we flew back to Sydney Sunday afternoon for a show in Sydney. Then I think Thursday we flew up to Brisbane to do TV and then do a house show and then fly back to Sydney. And then we flew to Adelaide and we flew to Perth, which is like flying from New York to LA. So it's quite a long flight. But when we went, everybody had to wear a jacket and a tie. So when we were out there, we were, he wanted us to be professional even back then. And I didn't really have a clue what was going on. Well, you're the boss. If that's what you want, then that's what you get. And I thought I was making a good dollar there. I was pretty happy with it because in New Zealand at the time, I was working 40, 50 hours a week and making about $45. So it was a pretty good payday. But for me, I thought, but it wasn't. Not more.
And as far as Bruiser Brody, you met him in the early days, as you mentioned, and were there, met Barbara. Could you share some memories of him? Because he's a very popular subject on my channel.
Yeah, well, Bruiser, I never met him till I went to Australia. I was, let me see, I think I was going to Japan, and I wanted to go back to New Zealand first, and Vince Senior booked me and asked me if I would go to Australia. So, that helped me with my airfare because the promoters over there would have paid me. So I went over there and I wrestled for 2 weeks. And then on one of the televisions, they put me against Brody. And I'd never met the guy, till that time. I was out in New York when he was up there. And, I'm thinking, whoa, well, what do I do? I've heard about this reputation of Bruiser Brody. And, we had the match and he adapted to my style, instead of that aggressive style like a Stan Hansen or like he used to work. And we were doing high spots and it was a match I'll never forget. It was great. And he was quite the gentleman. I messed up a spot and I said, oh my goodness, and he said, no problem, things happen. So that was my memories of Bruiser, he was just fine. What did you?
So you didn't experience the bullying or any of those allegations?
No, none whatsoever. Wasn't even close. Just went in there and just give the people, a real good match. And it was it. It was a good match. I'd like to take a look at it sometime, if I could.
And as far as coming to the United States of America, you mentioned your first territory was Florida. I assume that would be for Eddie Graham. Could you share any memories of working that territory?
Yeah, correct. Well, I got into Florida, and I'm as green as grass, and I'm there with Johnny Gray, and we found a gym, and we worked out in the gym, and we went to the Sportatorium and worked out there. But at that time, Mike Graham broke into the business. I was running the names. Mike McCord, he broke into the business at that time. There was a Butler, Ellen Butler, he broke in. He pulled out of the business. Bob Orton Jr., him and I became good friends, and we're still good friends. And there was somebody else. So there was like 5 or 6 wrestlers that broke in at the time I was down there. So, and, they wrestled, they had good careers too, and they turned out to be great wrestlers. But the experience, one experience, I was with Johnny Gray and myself, and we went to Tallahassee, and on the way back, there was one of those vicious storms. And, I forgot his name. Anyway, he was driving, and he wanted to stop, and we would say, no, go on, go on, go on. And the wind would come and the rain, and it blew us off the road a couple of times, and he was all that. And we were on a Volkswagen Beetle of all things, you know, because we didn't have any money. I think the first car I bought down there was a 66 Mustang, and I paid $200 for it and had no air conditioner. And I think I bought it in April, I think. So I ran all through the summer months, and then I drove it up to New York.
And before you went to New York, I believe you had some success in the San Francisco territory, teaming with Pat Patterson, where you held the NWA Tag Team Championships. I know Pat Patterson was pretty much the Hulk Hogan of that territory, along with Ray Stevens. Could you share memories of being put with him, which must have been a great rub for you?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, actually, I went to New York. I was there 3 years. I went down to Atlanta for 6 months, and then I went out to San Francisco because they said if you went to San Francisco, you know, that was the learning. Roy Shires wanted everything to be, you know, right. You know, it was 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, he wanted everything correct, and they put me and Pat together, you know, and because I just followed Pat as, you know, what to do in the ring. And then I also tagged up with Ray Stevens at times, you know, who was Pat's partner many times. And of course, later on in New York to wrestle Ray, you know, which was great. I regard him as one of the best heels ever. But San Francisco was good. There were short trips, so you were home pretty much every night. I think the longest trip was Fresno, which was about 180 miles, if I remember rightly. And then I got to work out pretty much 5 days a week. I could work out 7 if I wanted to, but I chose just to work out 5. But it was good. It was nice and easy. No. There for 12 months.
That's a pretty good run. Was superstar Billy Graham there at all during that time?
No, not at that time. No. There was Fuji was there. Fuji was there. Morocco was there. Of course, Pat, and then you know, Rocky Johnson would come in. Peter Maivia would come in for certain shows, and Ray Stevens. Yeah.
And how was your experience with Roy Shire, who was another one of the geniuses as far as booking match finishes, as far as I've heard?
Yeah. Well, I heard all this stuff about Roy, but it was, he told me one time when him and Ray Stevens were together, Ray Stevens his best bump was the upside down turnbuckle, right? And Roy Shire says his best bump was the Beal out of the corner. So, yeah, I'm leading up to a story here. So in San Jose, we done San Jose on a Wednesday, and he give me the television matches. You know, that's when he gave the boys the TV matches and who you were going to work with. So I was wrestling a local guy named Jerry Monte, who was a real good hand, but he was local. He had a job, and he just wrestled part-time. So I went up to Roy. I said, Roy, I says, do you want this to be a clean match, or is Jerry going to be a heel? And he said, no. He said, it's going to be a clean match. He said, why? Can't you handle it? I said, no, I just want to think about it, you know. And so the next day we go up, and Jerry and I go into the ring. I talked a little bit about the match. And I said, I told him before, I said, Jerry, at one time, you're going to get me in the corner and you're going to bail me up. So I was doing this all for Roy. And so the time came, and he bailed me, and I went from one corner over to the other, and my foot hit the bottom turnbuckle on the other side of the ring. So that was all right. And we had the match, and I think they put me over. And then I'm coming out of the match, to go backstage, and there's Roy. And he said, hell of a match, kid. I said, thank you, Roy. And some of the guys, they looked at me and they said, he's never done that. But I think it was the Beal that put the match over in my mind.
Yeah, I always liked that move, and I tried to do it myself in wrestling, but could never do it as good as the master, obviously. There's a fan here that gave a tip and said he saw you wrestle superstar Billy Graham at the Nassau Coliseum in 1977. Any memories of that, and was he easy to work with?
You know, I'm going to be honest, I don't remember that match. I do remember a match in Philadelphia when he was champion. And like most of the matches I had with Billy, I thought they were very good. And Vince made a comment, you know, and he said, you know, you've had some of the better matches with Bill as he was champion, you know. But I enjoyed working with Bill, and it never gave me any problem, and it was smooth, you know. I like to, you know, put a match and make it kind of put some logic into it, you know. Like he was a big muscular guy, you know. I think, I don't know if it was that match or the match in Philadelphia, but we locked up, and we must have done nothing but the lockup for, you know, for maybe 5 minutes. You know, he pushed me back, you know, I pushed him, he pushed me, I went down on one knee, and slowly I got up, you know, and the, you know, the anticipation from the fans, it was there. They started to come. They wanted to see, you know, me, you know, come out on top, you know, as the baby. And it did. It worked out fantastic.
It was almost like ballet the way Billy Graham wrestled sometimes with it almost was like a dance when I would watch his matches, the way you talk about it, where he could go for 5 or over 10 minutes sometimes with just the lockups or the tested strikes. Do you think they took the
Go ahead.
Sorry, do you think they took the title off of him too soon?
I think so. But sometimes the you know, the promoters have a plan and they just stick to it no matter what happens. You know, I thought it was good. You know, he was going around. The crowds were coming. You know, he worked with Larry in Baltimore. He worked with Larry Sabisco. I'm talking. Worked with Larry in Pittsburgh. You know, the houses were good. Philadelphia, that place sold out when I worked with him there, and it was a beautiful summer's day, and I'm driving down from Connecticut on the on the New Jersey Turnpike, and it's beautiful. I said, nobody's coming to the match tonight, because everybody, you know, from Philadelphia, most people, they go to the shore, the Jersey Shore. So we got down there, and the place was sold out. I was tickled to death. I think everybody else was too.
Yeah, and I believe Billy holds the highest percentage of Madison Square Garden sellouts as far as consecutive. Bruno holds the most, but I think Billy is champion with something like 19 out of 20 main event Madison Square Garden sellouts, which is pretty
possible. Yeah, I'm not sure.
And back then, I think a sellout was 20,000 or more, where now they'll call it a sellout. It's something like 12 or 14,000.
Yeah. People you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they expanded it. I think you're right, but they expanded the Madison. Yeah, I know they can hold more people for a wrestling match than anything else they have there.
Was that one of your?
But I'm not sure of the number anymore.
I'm gonna guess Madison.
Oh yeah, I love Madison.
Is there any?
Yeah, that was. Well, there's actually two. There was. I first come in. It was probably 70. late 72, early 73. It was a singles match. And we went 20 minutes. And I remember I was sweating like a horse. And even the doctor came in, he said, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." I was fine, just working. We just worked hard. And then the other one was Lonnie Main, Moondog Main. And we beat the living bejesus out of each other. And we never said anything. It was stiff.
Actually, a fan that asked that, how stiff were the Moondogs? That was one of the fan questions for you.
Yeah, well, in the beginning, the first match, they were stiff as they were like rocks. And I talked to them, and I made no bones about it. We were working the next night, and I gave them my speech. It wasn't belittling; it was all business. And the next night, it was just completely. They'd done a 360, and they understood. So it was good, because.
And of course, your tag team with Rick Martel, which everyone remembers. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, Rick came in and they put us together, and we kind of we gelled, I guess. But Rick had a brother about my age that he lost in the ring, and I kind of became his adopted brother, I think, and we got on very well together, And Rick was a hard worker, and he was a good worker, and he was 10 years younger than me, but he'd been in the business as long as me, and he'd had a little more experience, I think, because he was with guys down in New Zealand and Australia, Mark Lewin and Curtis Iakea, Don Morocco. So he had all these guys with all this experience that he could capitalize on, And we talked about the matches when we drove to and from the shows, and what we could do to improve them. And we talked about, putting finishes together and stuff like that. And in the end, we didn't even have to talk, we just looked, and we knew what we were thinking. It was almost like a mind read. It was weird, but yeah, Rick was just fantastic.
I understand he doesn't want anything to do with wrestling anymore from the last communication I had with him. Do you still keep in contact with him at all? I think he's a real estate agent now in Quebec City.
Yeah, he's up in Quebec City, and we talk about 6-7 times a year on the phone, but he just wants to be there. His daughter's in college now, and he's there with his wife. He's got a nice house up there, and he's just enjoying life, and he doesn't want to go. I haven't directly asked him, but I've mentioned about coming out, and he said, he's just happy to stay home. And then with this COVID and the traveling and everything, I think he's ready to hang. Well, he's hung his boots up, it's enough.
There was a fan on here that wanted to know your thoughts on the Honky Tonk Man, who you would have probably dealt with more as an agent than as a wrestler.
With the who? You're fading in and out.
Oh, sorry, the Honky Tonk Man?
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on the Honky Tonk Man?
Oh, I loved him. He was a total entertainment. When he first came in, though, I'm looking at it. Is he babyface or is he a heel? Because he had that Elvis thing, and I used to razz him a little bit. But he had Jimmy Hart as his manager, and Jimmy had that megaphone, and we used that in a lot of finishes. And it was interesting as hell and really entertaining. But I think, you know, I used to razz him a little bit, but I think he took a little bit serious sometimes. I haven't seen him forever, but I can't wait to see him.
Yeah, they recently put him in the Hall of Fame, which was long overdue. And there's a lot of fans on here asking if you think you'll ever be in the Hall of Fame, because you've always had a good relationship with the WWE, and you certainly had a Hall of Fame worthy career.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, they haven't come out and directly asked me. I know one time a few years ago I was in New Zealand, and I got a call from the office, and I was in New Zealand when I got the message, you know, that they wanted me to go to Buffalo, and I think that might have been something to do with the Hall, because it was pre-WrestleMania, and it was a few years back. So I called the office, and I got a recording. Oh, excuse me. And I left a message. I says, I'm in New Zealand and I won't be home until whatever date it was I was coming home. And I didn't hear any more. So I don't know if that was just a miscommunication, and somebody said, well, he never returned the call, so maybe he's not interested. I don't know. Nobody's asked me. So I'll leave it at that. If they want to ask me, I'll give them the answer.
At what point did they start transitioning you into an agent's role, and how did you like being an agent with the WWE, where I believe you were an agent for decades with them?
Yeah, I think it was 1987, and Strongbow mentioned it to Vince, you know, as me becoming an agent. He asked me, you know, if I'd be interested. I said, yeah, I think I can do that. And it was a little tough in the beginning for me, because here's the guys that I worked with, and now I'm telling them, you know, virtually telling them what to do, but I'm only the carrier from the office. But then, you know, I got comfortable with it, you know, and I blended a little more with the boys, and they accepted me, you know, and I helped out, you know, when I could. If somebody had a little problem, like we were overseas one time, and one of the guys, he'd run out of money, you know, and he'd been taking draws, but he went out and he was drinking, and it cost him money. And he said, Tony, can I have a draw? I said, well, I don't have any money, you know. But so I gave him a few dollars of mine, you know, and I made him sign a little thing. So when he got back, you know, he paid me back, and just a little stuff like that, you know. Guys would get hurt, and you know, we'd be in a town, and then I took them to the hospital, you know, to get their knees X-rayed, and you know, they tore their knees up or something. Somebody somebody had I was going to say COVID, but it wasn't COVID, staph infection. So took him to the hospital, you know, get him checked out and get him back to his hotel. So, you know, I wasn't that, well, guys, you better do this, you better do that. You know, I was one of the guys. I know how I wanted to be treated, you know, and I treated them the way I wanted to be treated. And I think I even see guys now, I see guys that, you know, I haven't seen for 20 years. And when they see me, it's, oh, Tony, you said, you know, I'd like to thank you for, you know, the stuff you did for me, you know, when I was wrestling and you were an agent, you know, which makes me feel good. And it's good to see guys improve and get positions and doing stuff that I had told them, you know, they were doing wrong. Some of the guys, I almost had to beg, you know, to do something to improve their match. And they say, oh, well, I don't think it'll work. And I said, well, do me a favor, try it. And if it doesn't work, forget I ever said it. And of course, I knew it was going to work, and it did. And they got all excited about, you know, doing what I told them to do and getting the response from the crowd.
As far as working with Vince, how close did you become with Vince over the years? Because I'm sure every week at the TV tapings, you'd be getting messages and attending meetings with him, and I'm sure traveling with him from time to time.
Yeah, I didn't get too close with Vince. I met Vince first in 1972, and we're around about the same age. He's a year older than me, but I just didn't have the opportunity. We didn't live close to each other or anything, and like when he took over, he was the boss. So I talked to him on the phone, and then at the TVs, if I needed to talk to him, I talked to him. If I didn't need to talk to him, I didn't, because he had other people, he had other things to do. So I didn't, I wasn't, like, if he stopped short, I wasn't going to run into his backside, So just a very personal.
Is there anything that we would be surprised to know about Vince that you may have seen a side of him or know something about him that the fans would be shocked at knowing?
No, I can't think of anything. No.
As far as the best period in the WWE, the most exciting as far as the crowds and the energy and going to work and enjoying yourself, would you say it was the Hogan era or the Attitude Era, or what time period would have been your favorite?
Well, I think my favorite was the late 70s, early 80s, as I was working with the Samoans, I was working with the Moondogs, and of course going back, to the Valiant Brothers, but that was in the early 70s. But the late 70s, I enjoyed that. And I also enjoyed when I became an agent, to talk to the young fellas, and give them my thoughts on their matches and what they should do. Excuse me.
Yes, and you probably don't remember it, but when I was an extra a couple times, you actually selected me to have matches a few times. Was that part of your duties? Sometimes, I guess, during maybe the Ruthless Aggression era, to look at the extras and decide which ones get the TV matches.
Yeah, that was me and Rene Goulet. And I used to, actually, it was my job, to get the extras there, to the show with the help of the girls in the office, and then once we got them there and then matched them up with, we used to try, to match them up with guys, that we thought they could have good matches with, and that was the job, and I hope I treated you right.
Well, you were always nice to me because it was Les Thornton that got me my tryouts. So I know you were good friends with Les, who unfortunately passed away a couple years ago. You have any memories to share about him?
Yeah, Les was great. I met him I think I met him in Georgia, and we started doing free squats and push-ups. And then I think I got him in the gym, to lift weights for, I think that was the first time he lifted weights, and that was 1975, I think. And hell, he was pushing 300-pound bench press in no time at all. But one time I was in Australia, and Les was in New Zealand, and New Zealand had a bit of a blowout for, I don't know exactly what it was. So the boys from New Zealand that were overseas, they came to Australia when I was there, and I wrestled Les. And we wrestled in a small town outside of Melbourne. And I think we wrestled for like 35 minutes. and it was enjoyable as hell. But Les was as we call a shooter. You know, he could shoot. He could put the hurt on you. And he played with me a couple of times. You know, I just said, "Oh," and he laughed like hell. I said, "You bastard."
Have you ever been told you resemble Popeye? I don't see it, but a lot of the fans out here are calling you Popeye.
No, that's the first time. That's actually the first time I've heard that, by golly. Where's my son? Yeah, no, I haven't, but you know, like I said, I think I've been talking to so many people. But when I first went up for my New York television, I walked out. A lot of people thought I was Jack Briscoe. I mean, it was the hair, you know, and Jack and I are about the same height. And I think I was just a couple of pounds heavier. But, you know, they thought I was Jack Briscoe, which was quite a compliment, you know. But I loved Jack, and I loved the way he wrestled. He was fantastic.
Now, you've held the tag team titles so many times. Is there any reign that stands out to you as your favorite?
Any what?
Any like reign of your tag team title reigns in WWE
Oh,
that been your favorite?
Yeah, I would say with Rick Martel, you know, because we had it twice, you know, against the Samoans and then against the Moondogs, you know, and that was nice, you know. It was good to look forward, you know, to going and having the match with these guys, you know, because you kind of knew what they could do and what they couldn't do, so you didn't have to guess, and you felt comfortable in there. So you didn't have to worry about getting hurt.
There's a fan on here that wants to know who is your favorite tag team partner and who is your least. I think you've said it now that Rick Martel was your favorite. And this fan also wants to know what made you choose the abdominal stretch as your finisher. So a couple questions from him.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Rick Martel, you know, was definitely my favorite tag team partner. And the abdominal stretch, I think when I was in Australia, there was a wrestler, Mario Milano, and I think he used it. So I couldn't use it. But then when I came over here and they said, well, what kind of finish you use? And I said, abdominal stretch, you know. And then I figured I better figure out on how to put it on, because if it's not applied correct, if you don't go into it correctly, you know, it can't be applied, you know. So I had to practice, and then I got it, you know.
Michael Wald wants to know your thoughts on Larry Zbyszko, your old tag team partner, turning on Bruno Sammartino.
Yeah, well, I think Larry came up with that, and I wasn't in the territory at the time. I'm trying to think where I was. I think I was in the Carolinas. Yeah, so I missed out on all that. But I think it was just something that Larry came up with, and I think he spoke to Bruno about that, and then they went to Vince and talked to Vince about it, and that's how it happened, you know. But you know, it made sense. It certainly drew some money.
There's another fan asking about Haystack Calhoun, but that reminds me of a story Larry Zbyszko told me about Haystacks being given laxatives by Mr. Fuji on a plane, and the stewardess having old garbage bags under him. You weren't on that flight, were you?
No, I weren't on that, and I heard something about it, but you know, third party, I don't, you know, I wasn't there. I can't really comment other than I heard about it, and because he couldn't fit in the airplane bathrooms. But Andre was the same way. But Andre used to take, when he went to Japan, he'd take laxatives and clean himself out before he got on the plane. God, it sounds like a medical conference here.
Well, speaking of Andre, last night I interviewed Ken Batira as my chauffeur comes back here, but Ken had some pretty funny stories about Andre the Giant and going to the bathroom and stuff. But do you have any funny stories you could share with us about the Giants? Because Ken was telling us he actually has a funny side to him that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah, Andre. I met Andre in New Zealand just before I came here, and he could barely speak English. And I told him, I said, "Well, I'm going to the United States, and I'm going in March, so maybe I will see you there." Oh, yes, 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 but yes, you know. And then I think it was late 1973. I walked into television in New York. Well, in New York, in Philadelphia. That's where we done our TV, and Andre was there. Excuse me. And he got up, came over. He said, "Hello, Tony." He remembered my name. I said, "Andre, how are you?" Good. So I said, "How long you in for?" They were in for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks or something. I said, "Oh, who you riding with?" He said, "Oh, I don't know." He was there with his manager, Frank Valois. So I said, "Well, ride with me." I had a big LTD, and one trip we left from New Haven, Connecticut, and drove down to Philadelphia, done the show in Philadelphia, and then we crossed the Walt Whitman Bridge into New Jersey, and I knew where I could buy beer. So I said, "Well, we got about 160 miles to go, so a case and a half will be good." So bought a case and a half of beer. We got to the end of the Jersey Turnpike, and it was gone. So before I got on the George Washington Bridge in Fort Lee, I knew where there was a bar there. So I pulled up there, and I got another 3 6-packs. I said, "That should do it." Because Andre's drinking most of it. And before we got to the Connecticut border, the 18 were gone between him and his manager. It's we went.
Yeah, Ken was saying that the manager weighed about 300 pounds and could put back almost as much beer as most of the wrestlers, if not more.
Yeah, Frank Valois. But Andre was, yeah, he had a good sense of humor, and we were the same age, so that's what I have in common with Andre. I think he's 4 months older than me. He was 4 months older than me.
How was he to work with in the ring and to work with as an agent?
Oh, he was good. Yeah, he was excellent. Actually, I was down in the Carolinas, and I was driving him around. It was one of those holiday weekends, which were big in the Carolinas. And we had a show in the afternoon, and the night show was Greenville, North Carolina. So I drove him from the afternoon show, and then we went to Greenville, and he was working with Jimmy Snuka, and it's still one of the best all-round matches. Never mind, a giant against a regular guy. It was just absolutely fantastic. He could work, and of course Jimmy was a classic too. So I still remember that match. It was an absolute classic.
Rocky Johnson actually told me that Jimmy Snuka could have probably been bigger than Hulk Hogan if it wasn't for some of his reliability issues. Do you think, like, if Jimmy had had his act together a little bit more and been given that monster push, that he could have been an even bigger star?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was Vince Jr. was having a little control at that time, and they done that angle with I think it was Ray Stevens and Jimmy, or Piper and Jimmy. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I mean, we were drawing money where we never drew that much money at that time of the year, which was like September, October. But they put in that little angle, and away it went. But Jimmy came in as a heel, but the people liked him so much, you know, they turned him babyface. I was working with him. I had quite a few matches with him, you know, and it was a piece of cake to work with. But like you say, the unreliability, but he needed somebody to, you know, chauffeur him around, you know, and to take him here and do this and do that, you know. It was a bloody shame, really. He made some big money, big money.
And then there was that that issue, which I guess he may have been found civilly guilty for, but I'm sure that that wrongful death issue probably hurt his push as well, I would imagine. I don't know if you were with the company at that time or not.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, and I think I was. I think I might have been in the same hotel as it happened, but I was in bed, and I think I was still wrestling at that time. Yeah, that was. I have no idea what happened, but it happened, whatever it was.
How did you like the old days of the Allentown tapings where you guys would tape 3 or 4 TV tapings all at once?
Yeah, it was all right. It was a little hard, especially after Hamburg, you know, because then I had I think it was a 210-mile drive. And one time in Hamburg, I wrestled the dark match in the opening match, and I wrestled 3 tapes, and then I wrestled the dark match at the end of the night. So I wrestled 5 times, and then I had to drive home 210 miles. And we didn't have the highway, right? We took 22. We took 22 to 78, and then we had to get on 22 if we came straight through, which was the shortest way, and that brought us right through to Newark. Because now you got Route 78 that takes you.
Yes, and as far as being an agent and probably being a wrestler too, were you witness to many backstage fights over the years? I imagine you were probably there for the one with Rougeos and Dynamite Kid.
I was there, but I wasn't physically there. I was in the building. And I had no idea what the hell happened. But I think it happened, somebody playing a rib on the Rougeos, and I think that was in Florida. And then something went missing or some damn thing, and then I think it was Raymond that decked the kid, you know, just out of the blue. But, you know, that can be played. There's ribs can be played, and then there's ribs. But you got to. I was adamant about nobody touching my shit. You know, I had a Helen Burton, and I locked it up, and that was it. You know, and I caught Davy Boy, you know, sneaking a look at my numbers. You know, so I knew he looked at them, and he left the room. And then I changed my combination, and then I walked away, and then I came back a little bit later, and there he was playing with my my thing. I said, "I got you, you bastard." He thought,
one guy that they ribbed to death and like really tortured with ribs was Outback Jack. Do you remember that at all?
No, I don't remember too much about Outback, you know. Other than he was here, you know, for a short time. I guess they had a tour of Australia, and they was looking for an Australian wrestler, and he could talk good, but I don't think he got over too well with the boys.
No, sadly not, and I guess he's lost his vision now. But
really?
Yeah, he's blind now. He lives in Fort Lauderdale. His wife
Oh,
takes care of him, but
yeah,
kind of sad situation.
yeah.
What's your keys to looking so good? 75 years old. You look like you could still step in the ring.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Well, I work out regular, like, and I changed things. The first time, excuse me, now I'm doing like a circuit training. So I do circuit training, say, on Monday, and then, and it takes me 45 minutes to an hour. And I don't use heavy weight. And then on Tuesday, I'll go in and I'll stretch for an hour. But I cut red meat out in 1980, so I don't eat any beef, pork, or lamb. But growing up as a kid and in New Zealand for 25 years, we ate that every day, and we had chicken just twice a year. So I don't know if it's something to do with the with cutting out beef. I eat chicken and fish, and quite a bit of it. But I think it's a combination of eating. I have my alcohol. I probably average 2 beers a night. Some nights I won't drink. Another night I'll drink 3. Another night I won't drink. Another night I'll drink 3 or 4. And I like a bottle of wine now and again, red wine, and that's it, I guess. But I eat a lot of vegetables. I haven't taken a prescription drug in 42 years. I had a physical 3 years ago, and everything was perfect. I twisted my knee about 14 months ago, and I sprained the ligaments in it. So I thought it was the meniscus. So I thought, well, I'll probably have to get that operated on, but they can fix that, in a week, back. So I went and got the knee X-rayed, and the doctor said, no, everything's all right. You've sprained your ligaments on the inside of my left knee. But he said, your knee is perfect. He said, you got good cartilage, no arthritis, and there's good bone space. And I couldn't believe it because, I played rugby, since I was 5 years old. And then I got into wrestling when I was like 25. And, I was doing all that running on the sidewalk and on the road. And I ran around in bare feet till I was 12 years old. I was in bare feet all the time. So I don't know what it is. I drink a lot of water too. I think that's part of it.
That makes a difference. As we wind it down here, fans, if the ones are wondering why we're doing this while driving, it's because I have a boxing event to cover tonight as a reporter that I'm heading to about an hour away from my town. So I apologize for this. But as far as your favorite match, what was your favorite match of your career, both as a singles and as a tag?
In the singles, probably Don Leo Jonathan. I wrestled him in the garden for 18 minutes and 50 seconds. And he put me in a body scissors, and he clamped up a little bit, and almost threw my guts up. And then tag matches would be the Samoans. I think in Philadelphia Rick and I had a tag match with them, and it was just magic, terrific. So those would be my 2 matches.
How was working with the Ultimate Warrior as an agent?
As a what? As an agent?
Yeah, as an agent.
Well, it wasn't too bad, actually. I was just talking about that yesterday, I think. We were on the road, and with the Ultimate Warrior was working with Rick Rude, and it started off with about an 8-minute match, and then gradually we got extended, to like 15, 16 minutes, and the Warrior asked us, as an agent, do you think that's hurting my gimmick? I said, oh, no, because, he was strong, but we got to the point where, at the Ultimate Warrior was not vulnerable till that point. So we put some vulnerability into him, which, it creates, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the fans, well, can he be beat? And that's what we did. And I thought it was great, and Rick Rude was happy with it, and the Warrior was the only one that questioned it. But they were good, good matches, and the people were getting behind them. Like Rick Rude would put him in a sleeper, well, to get out of a sleeper, you got to be some kind of guy that make him even stronger. But it was just a matter of having him realize, and what don't have today, learning the psychology of the business.
There's a fan on here that left a tip and would like to know if you have any thoughts on Mr. Fuji. Did you ever witness any of his ribs or have him rib you?
No, he didn't rib me, and I don't. Oh, I seen him one time. He got a piece of tape, and some guy was sleeping at a television taping, and he had the tape so long, and he lit fire to the tape, and it gradually went up and to his shoe, and then the guy woke up and his foot was burning. But that was about it. But I heard a whole bunch of other ones, but like I didn't witness them, so really can't. That was the only one I witnessed.
Any memories of The Undertaker working with him as an agent?
Yeah, The Undertaker was good, and he was all business. But I remember the first time he worked with Yokozuna, and by the way, I regard Yokozuna as one of the best champions the WWF had up to that time, because he put everybody over. He's such a big man, but he could have matches. And there was in the match, and even Taker, he came to me and he said, Tony, there was something wrong there. It didn't go smooth. And I was watching it, and I said, yeah, well, at this point, you did this where you should have maybe done that, and segue in. He said, you're right, So he was good, I mean, if it was wrong, what I said, he would have told me it was wrong. And, but he agreed with me. But he was definitely a champion, and he was for the business.
You know who's not a champion, Hannibal? You're not a champion.
You're not a champion.
You're not a champion. The Undertaker, he would say rest in peace. Well, rest in peace to you and your fan base.
What are you doing on here?
Come on the Captain's Corner happy hour. Arrivederci, dork.
Get out of here, loser. Get out of here.